So, when you start thinking about coming from the financial planning world, there's a lot of people who just say they want to be rich. Oh, yeah, I just want to be rich.
Sure.
But it's really difficult to, I suppose, put a plan in place because, it's kind of this undefined goal or success.
Right.
Do you find that a lot of people come to you without maybe an understanding of what success means to them and really how that they should be then putting maybe a team around them?
Right. Often what happens to situations where people come in to see me is they already have a certain issue in life that they're dealing with. Oh, I've got to retire next month. Well, okay, we should have been talking about 3, 4, 5 years ago. Well, let's see, I'm moving, or I just lost my job, or whatever. It's a major thing that just happened to them. So they really are coming to me at a point where they should have been planning prior to this, but now we're here, we're in the event, and we need to plan ahead. So I guess, what I was thinking of talking about today was like last week we celebrated the independence of the country, right? And so I thought, well, let's think about financial independence. What does that mean?
And is that a goal that a lot of people have? I mean, I say get rich, maybe it's financial independence, whatever it may be. I mean, there is a big goal in that.
It is, but it comes in stages, actually. When you think about financial independence, think about you as a child, first of all. Where are you at? You're at home. Who are you dependent on?
Probably mom and dad.
Exactly. And where are they getting their resources from?
Millions of different places.
Right. They work. They bring home an income, and you are the beneficiary of them providing meals, clothes, education, and so forth, right? So you are dependent on them. So these are some of the major stages in life. Eventually, you got to leave home because of you want to leave home, and also they want you to leave home.
Right. It's mutually beneficial at that point in time.
Right. But you can't leave home until what? Until
I guess you can afford it.
Yeah. So you must become, to a degree, financially independent enough to be able to leave home. But when you leave home, of course, you no longer have those resources from your parents. Typically, you are now on your own because you have a job, you have income, you have responsibility, and now you have to learn how to use those resources wisely, right? So that's the first stage of financial independence, towards financial independence. But when you are at home, depending on your parents, they provide everything. When you are on your own, what happens if you don't quite have enough money to, let's say, buy your car, buy your home, go through the education process and so forth? Yeah, eat, whatever.
I like how the car came before eating, but, okay, I get it.
It's the main things. So the thing is, if you don't have the resources, on your own, then what happens? How do you get those items?
Probably on a credit card.
Yeah, you're using other people's money. Again, it's not your parents' money, it's other people's money. So if you don't have the resources, you're still kind of dependent on somebody else, right? So eventually, the idea would be to be independent from even those resources, which means that you have enough resources to take care of your lifestyle, your needs, your wants even, and possibly even your wishes, right? So even after you leave your parents, you might still find yourself, to a degree, financially dependent instead of financially independent. So working towards the independent stage would be like, okay, you have enough resources to not rely on anyone else's money, right? That would be the goal, wouldn't it?
Sure, absolutely.
And if that's a worthy goal, when should a person get started on that?
Pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, right. I mean, at some point, you got to get started almost at any point in time.
Yes.
Yesterday.
Right. So once you have a stream of resources coming in, let's say, an income from a job, and hopefully it's a job you enjoy, because if you have to go to work but hate going to work because you don't like the job or the people you work with or whatever, that's really tough to live life for just a paycheck. Okay, so hopefully you are making use of your talents, your natural abilities. That would be awesome to be able to go to work and enjoy going to work and it be a fulfilling thing in your life, okay? And also get resources. It's kind of like we were talking about earlier before the show, is how wonderful it was to attend this wonderful event over the weekend everybody's having a great time. Yes, it took a lot of work, but in spite of all the great time that everybody was having, what did we accomplish? We accomplished a lot of revenue for excellent charities, right? So we had a good time doing good for a lot of people. So hopefully that's kind of part of your life, is as you're generating your own resources, you're enjoying doing it.
Yeah, I guess when you say that and you talk about financial independence, and people come to you, as you said, about maybe potentially just trying to retire.
Right.
Do you feel like there's a lot of people out there who want to retire because they hate work? I mean, a lot of people just keep going and going into the wrong profession, or they're in the wrong field, and it's not fulfilling. And so their goal of financial independence is almost like more stick, the motivation is I just want out, rather than, than the ability to actually do what they want, or if that makes sense.
Right. Well, sure. That makes a lot of sense. And that is one escape, is retiring if you have enough resources to do that. Remember that when you, quote, retire, it just means that you're not being controlled anymore by the employer, okay? In other words, that was your source of resources, right? Your parents, and then your employer, possibly credit cards and banks and lenders and so forth like that. If you want to be free from all of that so that you have enough resources to use to enjoy a fun lifestyle, something that's more fulfilling to you in your life, okay, then it is a lifestyle change, right? You're going from somebody else controlling you and your resources to you controlling your time and resources and so forth. That's where you get into the world of, okay, how do I want to impact my world? How do I want to be remembered? Okay, like, for example, this wonderful event, right? Who's going to be remembered most for this event?
Richard Sherman.
Exactly. His name all over it. And, he's probably financially independent, wouldn't you say?
He's on a rookie contract, so he's probably more financially independent than a lot of people.
Right.
3 years. Next year, he'll be more financially independent.
Sure. So when a person reaches that awesome goal of being successfully financially independent, then what? Then you can do some fun things like what Richard Sherman did.
Sure.
Right? You can be helpful to a lot of people. You can have fun. You can just do things in your life that you couldn't do while you were being controlled by an employer or, somebody else. Right? So the whole idea, the concept of being independent financially can really impact not only your world, but also the world of other people who you might impact in positive ways. Right.
So, I mean, I think you make a really good point in that, when you retire, a lot of people just say, well, I'm just going to golf or something like that. Well, that takes 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do with the rest of that time? Because, in most people's case, they think that they have time and they have money.
Right.
Right. And they're both finite. You're not going to have endless amounts of either.
Right.
So what are you going to do with both of those? And, and a lot of what I believe is, when you start looking at what that independence looks like, you better have something to fill it with.
Sure.
Because reruns of Oprah and, daytime soaps are only going to take you so far. If you have nothing to go spend that time or money doing, it kind of becomes a moot point in some ways, or a less fulfilling point.
Yeah. There is a joy that can be experienced by being a blessing to other people that you can't experience in any other ways. Like, for example, when you are the recipient of charity or whatever, it's not as a joyful thing as if you are the person giving the assets and talents and so forth. Like, for example, so many different activities. Think of the Habitat for Humanity. If you have ability in building things and or resources or whatever, those are things that can benefit other people. I think of the two homes that were built for these service people who come home and really need to have a specially modified home. There are people all around us who are kind of in a bad way, suffering or whatever. The thing is there are so many ways that you can actually reach out if you had the time and the resources and you were yourself, okay, and didn't need those resources. That's the thing we want to get to.
Glen Thiessen joins us, wealth advisor with Transition Planning Inc. Glen, so when people come to you specifically and they say, I want financial independence,
right?
Do you have a series of maybe questions you ask them about maybe is there a motivational factor that you're working with in order to help them understand what they want out of financial independence?
Yes.
Is it just a numbers game? How do you tend to drive people, I guess, in some ways steer the car while they put the foot on the gas to their goal?
Yeah, some of the important questions that people have to think about is, probably the most important question would be, how do you want to be remembered? If you are not yet financially independent, but you have others who are depending on you, you better make sure that you're financially independent, even if you're not around to provide those resources, right? So you want to make yourself economically immortal. So you do that with...
I like that.
Yeah, you do that with life insurance.
I'll run with economically immortal.
There you go. So if you're not able or around to provide those resources, you want to make sure that your ability to get those resources is insured. You have the life insurance that's going to cover the years that you have to produce and provide this income, if that's your economic worth to those who are depending on you. So, and the reason you're working is because you're not yet financially independent. Right? So disability income, that kind of thing. So make sure that you're economically immortal for those who are depending on you if you're not already economically independent. So know what it is that know what the major events are yet that are coming up in your life, right? And think about being independent in such a way that you're not dependent even on government resources, for example, right? So what's the joy of living on welfare, right? If you just take a little bit of money and set it aside all through life, pay yourself first before you pay your creditors and so forth, then you'll have resources, that'll pile up. So know what it is that's coming up in your life that you still need to prepare for. Could be long-term illness. It could be a retirement coming up, or a job change, or a career change. Maybe a new career that would be more fulfilling to you. Know what it is that you need. When do you have to replace your car? When do you have to replace your roof? Plan ahead for those major expenses. Have that money so you don't have to use other people's resources, right? Because then you're a slave to the lender.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you? How important does lifestyle come into all of this?
Hugely important. If you live through life spending all of your income just to support what it is you want now without thinking about tomorrow, inflation and so forth, it's devastating. If you spend all of your income or more, which a lot of people do, then you're just like, the government going further into debt, right? You need to free yourself from that.
So what happens, you talk about a lot of people who are spending more than they have.
Right.
What happens in the next 10 years? I mean, have you put a lot of thought into the fact that a lot of people can't retire?
Right.
And a lot of people want to. And then, I look at places overseas in other countries where it's been completely devastating to a country.
Right. And then you get to, a point where, I just didn't set aside enough resources. Now I have to rely on the government programs, and now I'm a dependent on that. Let me ask you, when you're a child and you're growing up at home, whose rules do you follow?
Well, my parents occasionally.
Those who are providing your resources, right? So if you are a slave to the lender, right, you had to use somebody else's money, they determine how much you pay, when and how long, and so forth. Well, that's control over that much of your income, right? So you have to free yourself from that. If you are dependent on Social Security in the future, or Medicare, Medicaid, whatever, it's the government rules that you have to follow. If you have enough resources that you don't have to rely on that, then you don't necessarily fall under the same, it'd be good to not have to depend on the government.
Of course. Yeah. And I guess to my point, we just have about a minute left, is, you end up, you do have choices every day.
Yes.
And, you can determine what that success looks like to you and make the choices that will get you there.
Right.
Or a lot of people don't. And I guess some people don't have the choice. I mean, there's a lot of people who are just trying to scrape by.
Right.
And I think that starts to become my fear, is not, I don't have the solutions.
Right.
I can present a problem.
Sure.
But, you have all these people, as you're talking about, who are either in debt or they don't have enough savings and they are getting older.
Right.
And you have a social issue.
Right. health could fail, you could lose your job. Things happen, and your resources cut off, and before you anticipated that or could expect it. So that's why it's so important that from childhood on, okay, if you can set aside a dime out of every dollar, into your pocket in some way, you will always have resources, all right, to help you through that job change that came suddenly, unanticipated. So I'm just saying that think about tomorrow beyond today, and if you have resources, make the most of them. If you don't have resources, work your butt off to try to get to a place where you can provide for yourself. Somebody
once when I was about 6 or 7 years old handed me a silver dollar, said, hey, if you hang on to this, you'll always have money.
That's right.